Mona,
Yeah.
the most recent roles and responsibilities,
Yeah.
was that November 4th?
No, Bob sent it today and it was
Yeah.
dated 11/15/23.
It must have just gone to my Dover mail. Can you just forward it to me?
Yeah, let me
Uh,
see.
my JJ at M3 AG
Oh,
or JJ
okay. You know what? It
at
might just take me a
M3EQ.
minute here, John, because I've got to, wait a minute, I gotta stop this recording actually.
remotely conducted remotely consistent with Governor Healy's executive order of March 12th, 2023. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. I will confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. I am Bob Springer, Chair of the Board of Selectmen. Members, when I call your name, please respond to the affirmative. John Jeffries,
Present.
Robin Hunter,
Present.
Michael Blanchard,
Present.
Dave Hallovan.
Present.
Okay, ready to go. Are there citizen comments? I had a,
Kathy has her hand up.
I did.
yep, hi Kathy.
Thank you.
He has a comment, I believe.
Oh,
Yeah.
should I go ahead?
Go ahead, yes, please.
Okay, I just, well, first of all, I wanted to thank you, Selectmen, for scheduling this, the first item on this evening's agenda. But since I don't know whether there's going to be any comments allowed during discussion of item number one, I thought it best to address something here and share some of the background, including the original recommendation that the Carroll Management Advisory Committee made or voted on June 9th of 2022 to present to the selectmen at a meeting to be determined, and it never really got a chance to happen. And that recommendation in the motion was that the management and operations of the Carroll Community Center remain under the aegis of the Parks and Recreation Commission and be directed by the Director of Parks and Recreation, with new hires reporting to the Director of Parks and Recreation. And further, that we retain the current structure of delivering maintenance and custodial services to the Carroll Community Center, namely having a building maintenance superintendent reporting to the town administrator and deploying custodial staff where and as needed. And we had several reasons supporting this recommendation that we ultimately voted on after 2 years of research and discussion. So the cost, we felt that the building director position would add unnecessary cost to our town budget. The Park and Rec Department has known for at least 2 years that it would need an additional indoor programming assistant director, and we all know that additional custodial help will be needed for this new facility. Regarding space, there's no space for a Board of Selectmen's manager in the community center. It was noted in January of 2022 that no such office space was in the plan, the building plan. It seems that a little late to squish it in 2 years later at additional cost, and especially when the need is for programming assistance. And a third reason is jurisdiction. The security and maintenance are definitely care and custody that are clearly under Board of Selectmen's jurisdiction, but I think programming is not, at least according to our bylaws. The current structure that we have for the issues of security, maintenance, setup, and takedown for programmed events can and should be retained. Building superintendent for the 5 municipal buildings. He hires and deploys all the custodial staff. They report to him. He reports to the selectman, the town administrator. And we have Park and Rec and COA teams that have been working very well together for the past many years. There's nothing broken here. Our paradigm has worked very well for many years, and it's still working even under the difficult circumstances, and it should be given a chance in the new facility. And I think that's what that was the majority of all the unanimity of the voting members present wanted the flexibility to try what we've got going in the new facility. So whether that's germane to any of the discussion that you were intending to have later, I don't know, but it's a citizen comment.
Thank you, Kathy. Well done. Anyone else? Chris?
Thank you. I came in late, but I heard most of what Kathy was saying, and we discussed it at our Park and Rec Commission meeting. So I agree with everything she said. I would just add to that. Again, anticipating your discussion and willing to contribute later if you wish. You know, it's already been explained to us, I think, in a previous meeting by the town administrator that that the reason this position is going to happen is because the selectmen are committed to it. But I would suggest that it would also be helpful and probably I would think necessary at the town meeting to explain what is the scope of work for this individual. So you're going to hire them for a full-time 40-hour position. What are they going to do? And what all that's been explained so far was that or articulated was scheduling. And scheduling's a bit complicated because that could mean a couple different things. Scheduling in terms of management of a facility, the same way, you know, any landlord of a building, you're responsible certainly for figuring out the hours of the building. So that would certainly be something that would fall under the Board of Selectmen. I think in addition, allocation of the space on some kind of schedule, just like we had in the prior community center. There were dedicated spaces, there were spaces that were allocated for periods of time. So that could all be certainly figured out. That was something that CMAC advised the Board of Selectmen on previously. That's something that a future CMAC or somebody could do as well, or this individual. When you get into scheduling of programs, that now encroaches into Park and Rec space, as Kathy was discussing. So that's not scheduling probably that this person would be doing in terms of, you know, deciding who is going in into a program. And then any other scheduling, whether it had to be kind of done on a dynamic basis, like, you know, who's going to go into the community room or something like that, could be done the way it was done previously, which is mostly automated in a software program. So I don't think that needs to be a manual process. So that's, again, just to underscore the point, the only thing we've heard about is scheduling. If there are other things that you're intending for this person to do for the community center, I think it would be important for you to articulate that at the town meeting when you request the funds for this. If instead this is a position that you're looking to fill as kind of a utility player around town for other responsibilities, I think that should be articulated as well. I don't know what your vision is, but that is just one of the things I think is very unclear right now. And I would just advise and suggest that you be prepared to discuss that at the town meeting, because if not, that could be a very long meeting if it's debated as to what these people are actually doing, or this person is doing what we're hiring them for. So that was my only additional comment in addition to what Kathy said. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Anybody else? Okay, we'll go to item 111. John, you want to talk about the Board of Selectmen and how we got to where we were, or you want me to go?
Why don't you go and then we can comment as we go through.
Okay, so I was kind of surprised by the reaction of the building committee at a building committee meeting, and it was 1 or 2 weeks ago, about the confusion concerning who's responsible for what when it comes to a town facility, and what the roles of our respective boards and committees are. So my understanding, and Mike, please step in if I step on my tongue. So my understanding is, and I think it's pretty clear, Chris Dwelly talked about this almost 2 years ago, that we're talking about the facility management. Facility management is a VOS responsibility. Then the question becomes, okay, how far does that go, and what is it that we want someone who is a community center director to do? Well, the community center director idea first came to light around 2019 when Ford and I were visiting other community centers, and we looked to see if we could find one that had a model for management that we preferred over CMAC. CMAC was dissolved in, I think, 2022 or 2021. It was dissolved because, yeah, Kathy, yes, it was dissolved at a meeting, we voted. And it was dissolved because we didn't have a community center to run. And Mike can look those dates up. So looking at the various and sundry like town communities, the idea of having a community center director seemed to be producing really good results. And one of those results are to make sure that we engage as much of the community as we possibly could do. So that was sort of the spark that started the discussion around, do we need a Dover Community Center director? I came back with a yes after seeing the results. And I think my colleagues supported that again with a unanimous vote. So then the question became, how do we go about working through this issue? I think we started in 2021 and just about so Kathy was there. So we worked with CMAC. We talked to everybody about this change with CMAC. I specifically talked to you, Chris, about this change. We talked about it all the time. We put together a working group. There was a job description that had gone over and out. It specified all of the responsibilities. So characterizing as you don't, I don't know why you don't know, because he was certainly part of that dialogue. There was a job description. It had gone to personnel, all the people who were involved from Mr. Gulhuli to Janet Claypool to members of the building committee at the time, probably Ford, all had a chance to see it, review it, and give us their opinions. So I thought I covered all the bases, hence my surprise when apparently I didn't cover all the bases. So my impression was we covered the bases. You guys didn't agree. There are many reasons why you guys probably didn't agree, and that's your entitlement. My understanding is it ultimately will be our decision to make, and we went forth with what we thought was the best thing for the town, to be inclusive across the town interest groups, and to produce a community center that rivaled the ones that Ford and I saw that were clearly top in providing services. So that's my backstory. John?
So thank you, Bob. I think that's very, very accurate. I just went back, read my notes from the last meetings, the meetings where we have discussed this in the past, as you just referred to, with Kathy and Chris and the other members of the various committees. I also just want to remind people of a couple of things, that the model of management that Bob just referred to was a model of engagement. So we took the engagement model across the entire spectrum of all the services the town offered, from Council on Aging to all the classes to the various facilities and activities that happen in the town. We modeled the scope of the services and the scope of management as we perceived, as Bob just described. The Board of Selectmen perceived the scope of management, which Chris just alluded to, that we will very clearly articulate the scope of management is going to model the scope of engagement that is across the town. The engagement with the Carroll community was a one in the old building of the silos of the various responsibilities that both Kathy and Chris mentioned. our model is much broader. Our model is much more inclusive, and our model of engagement is also, from a management standpoint, Chris, to speak exactly to your question of how we're going to articulate this, it's very simple. We're going to articulate this in a model of engagement that's cooperative across all the lines of the towns that we serve. So I just wanted to make sure we cover that. Bob, is that clear?
Yes, to me anyway, yes.
Okay. Robin, do you want to add anything to that?
So I am kind of surprised that this is coming up at this late date. I believe from the get-go, the idea was always to have a person in charge of operations of the building, and that was a manager of the building or a director of the building. I think shame on us as a board of selectmen for not recognizing or realizing that there was no longer an office. And by not having an office, I believe the assumption is that we were no longer committed to a director. My recollection is from looking at various community centers, I also had many conversations with Carl Valente that these community centers run most effectively with someone in charge of operations. I think what we have to keep in mind is that it is imperative that everybody in this community has equal access to the building. And having Park and Rec in charge of the building doesn't make sense. They are key stakeholders. We always said there would be a committee that would work with this director for input. You know, the goal is to have this community center open from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. So that it is serving all of the community, not just COA and Park and Rec. And you know, I think this is a really big job. I agree with Chris. We need to do to be able to articulate what the job is at town meeting. And I just don't see how Mark has the bandwidth, given he has a full-time job today, to take on these additional responsibilities to run the building the way it's supposed to be run, to serve the community at large. And I really think the time has come for all of us to put our differences aside. We are very, very fortunate to be having this building. This is a building for the community. Let's start working together to make sure that it is the success that I know it's going to be. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Robin. Chris, I'm going to come back to you. Right now, I'm going to go to Mike. Mike, do you have anything to add about?
No, so again, obviously I don't have the history that the board has, haven't been only here 4 months, but I think you hit on all the points that have come up in our discussion. And, you know, I think in all the conversations that I've had, whether it be with Parks and Rec or COA or with the board, I think everyone's clear, to Bob, your point earlier, the Board of Selectmen do have, you know, operational oversight of the building. I think everyone's on that same page. So to Robin's point, I think, you know, it's important to try to move forward with that perspective in mind.
Okay, Chris? You're muted, I think.
All right, hello. Yeah, thank you, Bob. And then I'd just like to have Mark speak after me about his plan for staffing, which is one of the questions that came up, given the new community center. But I think we're actually a lot closer than we think we are. And I want to just react to a couple of comments. I think, Bob, you're absolutely right. In the due diligence that you did, what I recall was there were probably 3 different models. One was, I think it was Stowe, actually did it as kind of a joint venture between Park and Rec and Council on Aging. That was who ran the building. Not the building, but the programming of the building, the use of the building. I think it was Lexington that had a director of the community center that reported to Park and Rec. And I think the third one was either Wellesley. I don't think it was Wellesley because that was a Council on Aging, but it was Weston.
So according to Carl Valente, Lexington reported to the town administrator.
Yeah. At the time we were told it was reported to Park and Rec, and I think Mark even got an org chart that showed it reported to Park and Rec. but they may have changed it since then. But
Yeah, things
I
do
think Weston
change.
was the one that was independent. But either way, I think, Bob, you're making a good point. That is a choice. Like, you know, you can have your opinion, and you had your opinion on how this should go, and that's what you took back to the Board of Selectmen. CMAC never actually presented to the Board of Selectmen, so that was we never had that opportunity. But that again is a choice, and you can bring whatever recommendation you want to the town meeting, and people can decide. I think, John, your comment about inclusive programming across the town, Park and Rec already does that along with Council on Aging, and so I'm not sure that's necessarily something that's not currently in place. I think that I don't know how that would be an enhanced offering. I think it would be a continuation of what we offer now. And Robin, I think your point about operations is a really good one. Like, that's, I guess, where I was going with the scope of work. What is that? Like, because if you're talking about community programming, that's in the domain of Park and Rec, by law, and I think by Mass General law. And so there are other activities in operations of the building, like security, like opening, closing, like allocation of space, those kind of things. So, you know, certainly physical plant. So, you know, facilities and so forth, which the selectman is always handling. Carl Warnick handled it, you know, in the previous building. And so absolutely good point on operations. I just feel like we need kind of like I've told the Park and Rec group, we need like the Venn diagram that says, you know, here's the Park and Rec circle, here's the COA circle, here's the Board of Selectmen circle. What do they each have in them, and where is their potential overlap? And we just have to be sensitive to that, because I do worry that we're talking about the same things, but we're in our minds, we have different people doing them than what is probably going to happen. And so just want to make sure we're collaborating and communicating about that as we go forward. Thank you.
So Mike,
Mark, do you want to just,
thank you, Chris. All right. No, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
I just wanted to make sure Mark had a chance to talk about his staffing plan for once we're in the new facility.
I'd like to get one thing clear first, if you don't mind. I mean, you've made several statements about Park and Rec sort of having exclusive right to programming for the town. Is that true, Mike?
So I don't have, I'm trying to pull up quickly the Mass General Law, but I believe the bylaw does, you know, say that they do have oversight of parklands and public, you know, recreation on those lands. I can try to pull up the Mass General Law, but I mean, again, I don't think that prohibits other groups from providing programming like the COA does now. You know, it doesn't prevent other groups from doing programming, but it does call out that Parks and Rec does have responsibility for programming.
Right. And are they asked to serve a specific demographic?
I will try to pull it up as we talk.
All right. I think that'd be a nice piece of information to have, actually. Okay. Go back to you, Chris? Oh, no, go to Mark. Sorry, Mark.
I just wanted Mark to talk a little about his staffing plan.
Yep.
Yeah, no, thank you, Bob. So I think, you know, what Chris was alluding to and what we've talked about at our meetings is just we right now have a part-time position, a program assistant. I think going in our budget for this current year is to you know, talk with the personnel board and talk with HR and go through the process of trying to make that full-time, just based on programming that we've seen. We've you know, in the 10 years since we've had that position, we've grown in terms of number of programs, in terms of roster spots, in terms of community events. So I think, you know, obviously the decision that's made from the Board of Selectmen, you know, that's one part of it, but then also we have our side in terms of programming and what we need to service the town and what the residents want, what they've asked for. So yeah, so that's part of our, you know, moving forward as a department and moving forward with our budget for this year. That's part of our plan for the department.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? John?
I just want to comment one thing, Bob, that we've gone back and forth and make sure that this is just not lost in the nuance. But just to go back to Chris's comment about engagement and the scope of work, Chris, the engagement and the scope of work that the selectmen see goes beyond the boundaries or the perspective, as Bob mentioned and Robin mentioned, of the of Park and Rec, and our vision and the vision that we've been articulating, and certainly as I said earlier, and we all have said, the scope work that we will articulate to our constituents will be the scope of work that will go beyond Park and Rec. The building is going to be a community center. As Robin said, Council on Aging and Park and Rec are key stakeholders, but we have been engaged with you as a key stakeholder from the very, very beginning. We're going to make that engagement broader. We're going to make that engagement across every part of the town. We're not in any way disputing what Park and Rec does, the people that Park and Rec service. That is a fact, not in dispute. We're just going to go well beyond those boundaries.
If we're lucky.
Can I just ask what is beyond what we're like? Who are we not serving right now that you feel like you're going to serve?
Well,
if it's a constituent group, I'm just trying to understand who that is.
So think of it as a constituent group that would fall outside the purview of recreation, or if it was a town group, if it was a book club, if it was a study group, if it was a political action group, if there are many different groups that meet in the library, that used to meet in the town hall, that we're all a part of, that are not under Park and Rec.
So this is very helpful, because what you're talking about, and this is kind of where I was going, you're the Board of Selectmen. You can decide that I'll make up a room, the boardroom. I don't know what rooms, I can't remember what rooms we have. The boardroom on Tuesday and Thursday evenings is going to be made available to all of those groups you just talked about. Like, absolutely. We can put that in a scheduler. We can manage like that. That's easy to manage. I think you're absolutely right. Like, a political action committee would not come to Park and Rec for something. Totally agree. But if you want to make space available to them, that's that master plan. That's that master schedule. I totally agree. You're in charge of the master schedule. So who gets what when, or what types of groups and how they access it. And we can put it all in a computer program. It could be on the website. Like, this is very easy stuff to lay out. So I think that's great.
Well, I think that you agree with us, so I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
And for the practical day-to-day running of the building, and for the practical implications, again, based on my research, and it's in the job description, by the way, that the operating team for the community center would include Mark and Janet and the director of community center. They would make up the management team, and they would be responsible for doing those things. And I also agree 100% with Robin. We in town make a mistake when we keep piling work on people who already have full-time jobs. If you read the job description, if you look at what's going to be demanded of this individual, we need a person. So I am pretty prepared to say, for me, I'm going to stick with, we need to hire a director of community services. If we need money, we'll figure out how to get there. We were able to go from 13 million to 19 million to 25 million for the community center. So there's certainly an interest. And if you haven't seen the job description, let me know, and I'll ship you a copy. So you and the board, and Dick, if you guys on the building committee want a copy of the job description. Not that I think it has anything to do with your responsibility as members of the building committee to tell us how to manage the facility or who we should hire. I think you stepped way over the line on that. And I also thought some of the behavior at that meeting, particularly at the end, was disrespectful. So, I am ready to I'm going to ask John and Robert if you want to revote our vote. We had a unanimous vote to hire we had a job description that we sent to personnel. We had that was syndicated very broadly, like the roles and responsibilities. The fact that there was a mistake, right? Well, we're talking about Dick, we have a $250,000 asbestos oops, because our guys that we picked to look at the asbestos messed up, quite frankly, or it was much harder than he thought. Adding an office to a flex building, what not to be a big deal. And so I'm not going to excuse the escape on the part of our asbestos removal and then be forced to live with a mistake. That was not the Board of Selectmen's mistake. And change a management model that we know works well. So, John, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't think we need to redo anything. I think what we've already decided upon is what we are going to move forward with.
I agree. I mean, it's in our budget, and I agree with Chris. We need to be able to articulate better the roles and responsibilities. And, let the town decide. If the town votes no, we're gonna have to figure out how to do it with the resources we have.
Good, Chris.
If I may, yeah, one last, if I'm thinking of the job description that you presented, I think it was the beginning of the summer. That was one that was,
So Kathy, hang on. When did we do that? Was that the spring of 21 or 22? When did the group do that? The job description, and we talked about all of the, you're on mute, Kathy.
No, she got off.
Off. It was, all of this work was done, that the major part of it was done from January to June of 22.
Right, okay, so all of the work that you've done, the research of the different centers, the different operating questions, et cetera.
Actually, some of that was done in 2021. So, I mean, as I said, 2 years, and then we were disbanded in 23, April of this past year.
So that block of work exists. That block of work would form the foundation of work going forward to prepare for the opening in fall 2024. Yes.
Yeah, you can read
Yep.
the minutes, you can do all sorts of things. Yep.
the
Okay.
only,
Charts.
the only thing I would just suggest that the Board of Selectmen review that job description, because that was created with the intent that it would be reporting to Park and Recreation. And so
Actually
that,
not.
well, I'm just telling you what's in the job. If you read it, there's words in there about programming. So
Yes.
you might just want to edit all of that out, because it was written for a different chain of command than what you're contemplating. So if you want to have it be a Board of Selectmen chain of command, it's totally your prerogative. It just makes sure it doesn't have things in there that are going to cross with what Park and Rec is responsible for. That's all.
Well, I think I asked that question earlier, right? I asked Mike about limits on Park and Rec, and do you have the exclusive right for programs, and how does that work?
Yeah. Right, but in that process, you might just want to look at it and make sure you're comfortable with what
You were quoting me
what you
chapter and
document.
verse. I thought it was back in law school.
So actually our head of HR has the description, and she's looking at the job description, and she's also talking to other towns. So we will
Right.
make sure, but I do not, I think the reference to programming there was to ensure that everybody in the community could be represented.
Well, I
We're
think
not,
they-
and Chris, please let me finish.
Sorry.
Not everybody is represented by Park and Rec, and not everybody is represented by the COA. In discussions that I've had with other town administrators, it is really, really important for these community centers that every taxpayer who's paid for this building feels as though they have a right to use it. And that's why I think it's really important that you have somebody in charge of operations, and then a group that works together to run the facility when it comes to programming.
For the benefit of the residents.
Right, all residents.
if I may, I actually, if you want my personal opinion, I like where John was going with engagement. I think that makes a lot of sense, and that keeps it separate from programming. So I think that directionally, I think that actually makes a lot of sense.
Good, thank you. So if there's nothing else, we're going to keep going on the current course. Right, John?
Yes,
Robin? Robin?
Yeah,
Okay, so I want to thank you for participating. And I really do like your passion and energy. I'm sorry we disagree, but I think if we work together in the interest of community, and meaning entire community, and I can only tell you that in 2018, it was a certain guy who came to me and said, emphasize community, when I started on this quest. And I thank him for that. I want to remind him about that conversation that we had. And he didn't
Duly noted.
Okay, Dick, you good? Okay. Good enough. Then we're going to move on to the next agenda item.
Okay.
Thank you all very, very much.
I'm sorry, Bob. I was just trying to get my.
Oh,
unmute-
sorry, Dick.
No, that's fine.
I thought you were doing ASL.
I couldn't get to my unmute button fast enough. So, I mean, at some point then, the building committee is probably going to need some direction as far as design and potential build out. Which obviously would be a question, a discussion, I suppose, offline, but we'll be looking for some direction.
Okay. Just you know where to get me. I'm generally here.
Oh.
And I am in theory your rep. So
Okay.
too bad for you, Dick. All right, guys. Thank you. We're going to move on.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Okay, item 1.2. Board of Selectmen roles and responsibilities and guidelines, document and potential vote. I'm assuming the guidelines have to go with the warrant committees. The recommendations coming out of from Jim and Dave about a set of requirements for sponsors of warrant articles. Is that what that refers to, Mike?
No, so the guidelines document, the name of the document you're reviewing is the
okay.
BOS Roles and Responsibility Guidelines.
Okay, so we didn't need anything to move ahead with the sponsors, the warrant sponsors on it. We did that.
Correct, that's been done, yep. So now just the newest, the most recent documents in front of you for the roles and responsibilities.
Okay, so one of our goals, meaning the Board of Selectmen, was to put together a roles and responsibilities document that tried to explain the executive role of the Board of Selectmen. And I was very pleased. Robin reached out and he said, we don't do bad work together occasionally. How about we work on this? And I think we had the draft, which is still intact by about 90% in about the first 3 days of working on it. Then we went through a series of revisions to try to dot all the I's and cross all the T's and decide whether or not we like semicolons or colons. And that went through a number of revisions. I looked at the Mass Handbook for boards of selectmen. I wanted to incorporate some of that language, so I wasn't just sort of skiing down a hill and with blinders on. So we got to a final draft. That final draft was sent out twice to all boards and committees of the town. We got feedback that we tried to include in the document. And then most recently, meaning the past week, I had sent the second final draft to Mike to send on to Nina to make sure that we were not misstepping in any way, shape, or form the town's bylaws or generally accepted selectmen principles. And our communications consultant, because I know Kathy will take a look at this and I'll get 42 pages of edits, like she used to do when I had to write the town report, to make sure we have it right. The intent here was to try to begin to clarify some of these things. The intent here was not to produce a pluperfect document. The intent here was to put together a living document that reflected the realities of our responsibilities as the executive board of the town going forward through time. So I incorporated the feedback, much of it from Nina, and proposed to you that we accept this new draft. If there are any other additions or changes, that we just do that as a living document going forward. The only sticking point that I have is the library, who would like more clarity about their role with the library. I went back a couple of times on that, and my suggestion on that is that when we produce the document, roles and responsibilities of the BOS, that we add to it the org chart of the town that was done by Carol Lisbon in 2010. And it shows the limited responsibility of the town administrator what he's responsible for on a day-to-day basis, and shows the independent boards as being independent boards. So I'm going to try that. I suggest that as the next step. Mike, I would like you to talk to the library trustee and see if we can get a better understanding of his concerns. And you know, I would ask that we accept this roles and responsibilities document, and you can make it subject to, there you go. So you can see that the Board of Selectmen and the town administrator on the left-hand side as I look at the chart. Library trustees doesn't come into the administrative area at all. So I'm not sure what's not clear about that. Carol did a nice job, by the way. This is on the website. Now, what I did when I sent this to the collective B, I highlighted the areas that the town administrator, direct lines to the town administrator, and from the BOS. And there should be no surprises there for anyone. But this lack of clarity, we've had a lot of change in town. People don't necessarily understand how this town has been running, you know, for a very long time. John?
Excuse me, Bob, thank you. That I would add nothing to this, but I would like it duly noted that I believe the hours work on page 4 should be dramatically increased.
What do you want? Suggest a number, I'll put it in. I think it should be like 5 to 3.5. I mean, it's unlimited on these special projects, right?
So the special projects, I can tell you, the group, but the police chief search committee has put in 40 hours of work just in the past 2 weeks.
Well, I'll take any suggested changes, John.
We should make even if we made minimum wage. No, there's nothing, just in terms of the scope and everything that we've received back, all of the edits, all of the numerous iterations. I'm looking at the most recent one is very comprehensive.
Yeah.
Robin?
I just don't understand why we have the red paragraph.
Oh,
I mean,
because you know that was a concern.
This is
don't
not
have
a
to have
binding document. I mean, this is just supposed to be in English for citizens, a way for them to understand what the board does. So, I mean, if you feel it's necessary, I think you could say that this document does not change the management of town government, period. I don't know that we need the other words there. I mean, it's not binding. It's an overview of the responsibilities. As you said, Bob, it's a living document. It's going to change. It's a roadmap for citizens to understand what the board does, and for new board or for people interested to see what the role is as it applies to the town of Dover. So those are
I think it does that, Robin. Thanks. The reason why that was in red is because it was the most frequently asked.
The most frequently asked question, Bob, was people got the impression that we were trying to overstep our boundaries when it came to management. So that's why I think the most important thing here is we're not changing the management model, period.
I have no problem with that whatsoever. So Mike, if you make that, you know, end it at, don't use red, I guess. We are not changing, or it is not our intent to change the management model of the town government.
And Bob, I think we should add the comment you made tonight, you know, this is a living document and it will be reviewed annually and
Yeah, that's right. I think
You
that's a
know,
good idea too.
adjust
to make it
it
part of the planning.
accordingly, right?
Yeah, I like that too. Okay, Mike, you have what you need.
Give me 1 second, just did.
Come on,
Yes,
Mike's
got it.
always taking notes.
Taking names.
Bob, would you like a motion to accept that?
I don't think it's necessary. It's
Yeah, I
not a
don't-
legal document.
It's right, it's not a policy, right?
Right,
Right.
it's,
It's just a document.
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. We all agree what's in it. Right,
Mike, what do you think? Do we need just a vote to say we agree to the document as?
I mean, I think there's clearly consensus, and given it's not a binding document, I think that's sufficient.
So we're good?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, then we're done.
We're done.
well, we're not done. Because you have to make a motion to adjourn.
Well, it's so, it says 7:15 on the thing. It says 7:15 on my computer. I moved to
Robin's-
adjourn the meeting.
Robin's record for shortest meeting still stands.
I need a second.
Second,
All in favor, right, Bob Springer?
I, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Thank you all very, very much. Dave, are you back from Germany or are you going to Germany?
I'm back from it's England.
Did you get a grouse?
You don't want to know how many grouse we got.
Dave, did you have a famous grouse?
Yes, we had a lot of pheasant and a lot of well, over there they call it partridge. There's just English
Yeah,
and
partridges, yeah.
and but yes, it's in Maine.